The first strange whispers. I never believed in ghosts. At least I didn't. Until the first day at Lincoln High. I was a transfer student, and everything about the place felt off, though I couldn't put my finger on why. The building was old, its brick walls weathered by decades of rain and sun. The paint peeled in corners, and the hallways always smelled faintly of damp wood and chalk dust. My friends back home would have called it creepy, but I shrugged it off as just an old school. I was wrong. It started the week I arrived. I remember sitting in the second-floor history classroom during lunch when I first heard it, a whisper. It wasn't loud, more like the faintest hiss just behind my ear. I turned around, expecting to see someone playing a prank. Nothing. Empty hallway. My heart thudded, and I told myself it was my imagination. Maybe the air ducts were acting up, or maybe I was just nervous about being the new kid. But the whispers didn't stop. Over the next few days, I started noticing them in different parts of the school, near the lockers, at the end of the science wing, even in the gym. Always soft, almost shy, as if someone or something was trying to talk without being heard. And the worst part? No one else seemed to hear it. I'd ask my classmates, "Do you hear that?" And they'd blink at me like I was crazy. Even teachers shrugged and said, "Old building noises, nothing to worry about." But I knew better. One afternoon, I was alone in the library, sorting through textbooks for a history project. The school was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every small sound feel amplified. That's when I heard it again, the whisper. This time it was clearer, almost forming words. "Get out," it said. My blood ran cold. I looked around, scanning the rows of shelves, the windows, even the ceiling. Empty. No one there. My logical mind raced for explanations, but I couldn't think of a single one. After that, I started noticing other things. Doors that were supposed to be locked creaked open on their own. Chairs moved slightly after I had just sat down. My backpack, left on the floor during class, would sometimes end up on my desk, even though no one had been near it. At first, I convinced myself I must be forgetting. Maybe I was absent-minded, maybe someone was messing with me. But deep down, I felt eyes on me, following me from the corners of the hallways, always just out of sight. The strangest part was the feeling that the whispers weren't random. They seemed directed at me. Whenever I walked past the old auditorium, I could swear I heard my name. Soft, almost mournful. "Ethan," it said one day. That S when I realized I had never been called by my first name by anyone in the school so far. My stomach turned. How did it know me? By the end of that week, I was exhausted. Sleep barely came, and when it did, the whispers followed me into dreams. I would wake up in a cold sweat, convinced someone was standing at the foot of my bed just watching. I tried to tell myself it was all stress, the nerves of being in a new school. But every time I walked through those hallways, I felt it. The weight of unseen eyes, the faint brush of a cold draft against my neck, the whispers that refused to leave. The final straw came on Friday. I was heading home, my bag slung over my shoulder, when I passed the old science lab. The door, which was supposed to be locked, swung open slowly, with a groan that echoed down the empty corridor. A single candle flickered inside, even though I knew there was no electricity running in that part of the building anymore. I froze. The whispers rose again, louder this time, urgent. "Leave. Now." My legs moved before my brain could catch up, sprinting down the hall, past the classrooms, past the lockers, out into the sunlight. I never ran so fast in my life, and I knew deep down that I hadn't imagined it. Whatever was in Lincoln High, it had noticed me, and from that moment I understood one terrifying truth. The school wasn't just old and creaky. It was alive in ways I didn't understand, and it had decided I belonged in its stories. Shadows in the hallways. After that Friday, I swore I'd never stay late at Lincoln High again. But promises like that are hard to keep, especially when teachers assign group projects. The following Monday, I stayed back with two classmates, Mia and Ryan, to finish our science report. It was already getting dark outside, and the school's corridors looked different at night, longer, emptier, and somehow colder. We were in the lab on the third floor, the same hallway where that candle had burned. I tried not to think about it, focusing instead on my notes. But even as we worked, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. Every so often I'd catch a flicker of movement from the corner of my eye, a shifting shape near the door, a shadow that didn't belong to any of us. At one point, Mia dropped her pencil. It rolled toward the back of the room and stopped at the base of the old supply cabinet. When she bent down to pick it up, she froze. "What's wrong?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just stared at the bottom of the cabinet, her face pale. Ryan went over, looked too, and muttered, "What the hell?" I stood up and joined them. The cabinet door was slightly open, and inside, etched into the wood, were dozens of names, scratched so deep they'd almost cut through. Some were old and faded, but one stood out, fresh and sharp. Ethan, my name. I stumbled back, my heart hammering. "That's not funny," I said, my voice trembling. "Who did that?" Ryan looked confused. "It wasn't us. It's been here." But that couldn't be true. That mark looked new, too new, like someone had just carved it. From that moment, the atmosphere changed. The air turned heavy, pressing against our chests. The temperature dropped, and then the whispers came again. At first, they were faint, like wind slipping through cracks, then clearer. "He's here. He knows. Don't look behind you," Mia screamed. Ryan's flashlight flickered out. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to stretch, crawl, and take shape. For a split second, I saw it. A tall figure standing near the door, draped in what looked like an old, tattered school uniform. Its head tilted unnaturally to the side, as if its neck were broken. I blinked, and it was gone. We ran. None of us spoke. We just bolted out of the lab and down the stairwell. Our footsteps echoed like thunder in the empty building. By the time we reached the main hall, we were out of breath and shaking. But the hall, it wasn't empty anymore. All along the walls, the lights flickered on and off, revealing brief flashes of movement, shadows darting across the floor, small, hunched figures watching from doorways. The whispers turned into laughter. Children's laughter. That was the most chilling part. We burst through the main doors, but when I turned back, I saw something that still haunts me. In the second-floor window, right above the entrance, a figure was watching us. It was the same shape from the lab, tall, broken, and still. Only this time I could see its face, or what was left of it. Half of it was gone, the skin burned away, the eye socket empty. But the other half smiled. I didn't sleep that night. None of us did. The next morning, Ryan didn't show up for school. The teacher said he was sick, but Mia told me his parents found him locked in his room, shaking, refusing to talk about what happened. I tried to convince myself it was just stress, hallucinations, tricks of the light. But then something else happened that shattered any doubt. During class, our teacher, Mrs. Green, handed out old yearbooks for a history project. Absent-mindedly, I flipped through the one from 1982. Near the back, I froze. There was a photo of the science club, students smiling proudly in front of that same lab, and standing right in the middle was the same boy I saw in the hallway window. His name was printed below the photo, Thomas Hale. I showed the picture to Mia. Her face turned pale. "That's him," she whispered. "That's the one from last night." I nodded slowly. My hands were cold, my throat dry. Below his name was a small black ribbon and a single line of text. "In loving memory of Thomas Hale, who died in the Lincoln High Laboratory fire, 1982. I felt the room spin, the burned face, the whispering voice, the smell of smoke in the halls. It all made sense now. Whatever haunted this school, wasn't he just a ghost? It was the spirit of someone who died there, trapped in the ruins of the past. And for some reason, it had chosen me. The locked classroom. After the yearbook revelation, I couldn't bring myself to walk the halls alone. Every creak of the old building, every flicker of light made my skin crawl. But curiosity, or maybe fear, has a way of forcing you forward, even when your instincts scream to run. I needed to understand Thomas Hale, and more importantly, why he was haunting me. The stories I dug up from the local library only deepened the mystery. Thomas had been a brilliant but shy student, obsessed with chemistry. The fire that killed him was said to have started in that very science lab during a late-night experiment. Some teachers whispered it wasn't an accident, that Thomas had been experimenting with volatile chemicals he didn't fully understand. His death had been tragic, sudden, and the school had been rebuilt around the charred remnants of the lab. That Friday, unable to resist the pull, I went back to the third floor after everyone left. I told myself I'd just peek inside the lab, see if anything else could explain the strange activity. The hallway was silent, but every step I took made it feel like the shadows were alive, pressing against me from the walls. The lab door was locked, but I noticed a small vent near the floor. My hands trembled as I crouched down and peered inside. It was dark, the faint smell of burnt wood still lingering. Then I saw it, a faint glow in the far corner. My curiosity overcame fear. I slid open the door just enough to squeeze inside. The room felt different at night. It was colder than the air outside, and every sound echoed unnaturally. My flashlight beam fell on the old supply cabinets, the ones with Thomas's name carved into them. And then I noticed it, a notebook lying open on a desk. The pages were yellowed with age, but the writing was fresh. It was Thomas's handwriting. I could feel my heart thumping as I read the first line. "I am trapped. They won't let me leave. Please, help me." A shiver ran down my spine. The whispers started again, this time louder, almost desperate. "Help! Help! Help me!" I spun around. Shadows moved along the walls, twisting, stretching, forming the faint outline of a boy. His face was burned and broken, but his eyes, they were full of pleading. He was not angry, not yet. Just desperate. I swallowed hard. I want to help you," I whispered. Suddenly, a cold wind slammed the door shut behind me. My flashlight flickered and died. I was plunged into darkness, and the whispers became screams. "Don't leave! Don't leave me!" Panic surged. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The shadows closed in, and I felt icy fingers brush my arms, my neck, my face. And then, silence. I fell to my knees, gasping, convinced I'd been frozen in some supernatural grip. Slowly, my flashlight flickered back to life. The room was empty. No shadows, no wind, just the notebook, lying open on the desk. I picked it up again and read further. There is a classroom, the one that should not exist. Locked, hidden. Only someone who sees me can enter. Only they can free me. My mind raced. A classroom that should not exist. I'd explored almost every hallway, every floor. What could he mean? And how could I find it before whatever haunted this place decided I was next? I didn't have long to think. A loud banging started on the ceiling above me like someone or something was pacing. The shadows returned, circling me, forming words on the walls with darkness itself. Find it, or stay. I ran. Out of the lab, down the stairwell, past the lockers until I reached the main doors. I could still feel Thomas's eyes on me burning into my back. That night I couldn't sleep. I drew a map of the school, marking the labs, classrooms, and hidden corners I'd seen. I traced every hallway, every vent, every door that seemed odd or out of place. And then I remembered the old maintenance room in the basement. It was always locked, labeled staff only. No one ever went there. I had a feeling. A terrifying, thrilling feeling that this might be the classroom Thomas meant. but going there meant facing whatever had been following me, facing Thomas. I didn't know if I was ready, but deep down I knew I didn't have a choice. The whispers didn't leave me that night. They followed me to the basement door, faintly urging me onward. Hurry, before it's too late. I gripped the handle, took a deep breath, and turned it. Night of terror. The basement was colder than anywhere else in the school. As soon as I stepped inside, the musty air wrapped around me like a shroud. My flashlight trembled in my hand, casting long, twitching shadows across the cracked concrete walls. Every step echoed, bouncing back at me like the building itself was watching, waiting. The maintenance room door was just ahead. It looked ordinary enough, painted gray, labeled staff only with a rusty handle. But I knew better. Thomas's notebook had led me here. He was waiting for me. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the handle. The whispers had returned, louder than ever, echoing in the basement. Open! Free me! Open! My pulse pounded in my ears. I took a deep breath, shoved the door, and it creaked open. The room was small, cramped, and covered in dust. Old desks and shelves were stacked haphazardly, but what caught my attention immediately was the far wall. There, written in soot or ash, or maybe it had always been there, was a single message. Only the living can set me free. As I stepped closer, the shadows in the corners of the room started moving. Slowly, a figure emerged. A boy, his face burned and twisted, his school uniform tattered and gray. Thomas Hale, his eyes, hollow yet pleading, locked onto mine. You came, he whispered, his voice a hollow echo that seemed to rattle the walls. I want to help, I stammered. He raised a hand, pointing toward the center of the room. There was a chalk circle drawn on the floor, faint but visible. Inside it were more names, scratched into the concrete. Old students who had vanished over the years, or perhaps other spirits trapped like him. You must complete it, he said. Write your name, then speak the truth. Only someone who lives can break the cycle. My hands shook, but I knelt and carefully etched my name into the circle, right in the center. Then, summoning every ounce of courage, I whispered aloud, I will not be afraid. I will face this. You are free. The room went silent. Then, suddenly, the air shifted violently. Shadows screamed and twisted, spiraling around me. My flashlight flickered wildly, and I felt icy hands brush my shoulders, my arms, my face. But I didn't run. I stayed in the circle, repeating the words. Then, light. A blinding white light filled the room, burning away the darkness. I fell to my knees, shielding my eyes, and for the first time I saw him clearly. Thomas's face, no longer burned or broken but serene. His body shimmered, almost translucent, and he smiled at me. Thank you, he whispered. And then he was gone. The shadows dissipated. The whispers stopped. The room was quiet, peaceful, as if it had been waiting centuries for someone to understand. I stumbled out into the basement hallway, my legs weak, my heart still racing. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight of the school lift from my shoulders. The next morning, Lincoln High seemed different. The hallways were still old, still creaky, but there was no sense of being watched, no whispers, no shadows following me. Students chatted and laughed as usual, completely oblivious to the horror I had faced. I never spoke of what happened to anyone, not teachers, not friends. Who would believe me? But I carry it with me, always. A reminder that some places remember those who have fallen, and some spirits linger until someone helps them find peace. I still walk past the old science lab sometimes, and I swear I can feel a gentle presence watching over the school, not menacing, not angry, but calm. Thomas Hale is gone, finally free. And for that, I survived. But sometimes, late at night, I hear a faint whisper at the edge of my mind, almost like a sigh. Thank you. And I shiver, knowing that even the bravest living can't always see the shadows of the past until they choose to face them